The year is 2025, and if you expect to see justice in the Netherlands, it ain't happening. The Netherlands police have arrested Arno van Kessel, the lead attorney suing Bill Gates, Albert Bourla, Mark Rutte et al. For COVID-19 vaccine injuries. The civil process was scheduled to begin on July 9. Mr. Van Kessel was arrested in a Gestapo-reminiscent early morning raid by parliamentary police on June 11, where he was reportedly blindfolded, bound, and taken into detention, where he still remains almost 2 months later. Readers will note my tardiness, says Nick Holscher, in reporting this stunning story. The reason is because both the European and the American press have completely ignored both the civil trial against Gates, Bourla, Rutte et al. And Van Kessel's arrest. Nick Holscher says he became aware of the story when Aidan Salazar of InfoWars recently reported on it. Nick says Salazar's report prompted him to do a Google Netherlands search with the keywords Arno van Kessel gearresteerd. That is Arno van Kessel arrested. And he got one search result for a June 27 report in an independent online journal called De Andere Krant, or the other newspaper. The following is an English translation. It says that Arno van Kessel will be held in custody for an additional 90 days because the Public Prosecution Service continues to designate him as a suspect in an investigation into a criminal network, yet without presenting any evidence. This means the Leeuwarden lawyer will definitely not be present at the public hearing on July 9th in the Leeuwarden District Court, where the first substantive hearing in the internationally high-profile case against, amongst others, the state of the Netherlands, Mark Rutte and Bill Gates is scheduled. His partner, Peter Stassen, is on his own, but he says he will appear fully equipped. In early June, this newspaper reported that there was finally some progress in the internationally high-profile lawsuit by Leeuwarden lawyer Arno van Kessel and his Eindhoven colleague Peter Stassen. In 2023, the legal duo announced they would file legal proceedings against Bill Gates, Mark Rutte, the Dutch state, among others. On behalf of their clients, they want to force the judge to issue a clear ruling on the question. Was the COVID-19 mRNA injection a vaccine for the benefit of the population's health or a bioweapon? Van Kessel said. It's one or the other, and there is no in-between. The Northern Netherlands District Court, Leeuwarden and location, announced in early June of 2025, finally, that the first substantive hearing of the case is scheduled for July 9th. On Wednesday morning, June 11th, there was a completely unexpected turn of events. Arno van Kessel was dragged from his bed early in the morning by a special intervention team with a considerable display of force. The lawyer, his daughter, and his wife were even briefly held at gunpoint. A day later, the police published a report on the website Politie.nl linking Van Kessel to a criminal network. According to a press release issued by the Public Prosecution Service, 8 people were arrested that morning for adhering to anti-institutional ideology and possibly intending to use violence. One of them was quickly released, while the other 7 were held in restricted custody for 2 weeks, meaning the suspects were not allowed any contact with the outside world. Van Kessel, as was announced last week, was being held in a cell in Voort. So the article goes on to describe some convoluted link to a sovereign movement. They explain here that Van Kessel is in no way, shape or form linked to this. They say it's remarkable that the mainstream media continues to use the sovereign frame. This is despite the fact that it was already clear in the first days after the arrest that Van Kessel is not a sovereign. As a lawyer, he is following the institutional path with his case. Van Kessel is also not known for being violent. He openly and unashamedly proclaims his faith in Jesus Christ everywhere, which implies that he opposes violence. The media writes nothing about this. They also ignore the story of Van Kessel's partner. Peter Stassen, who is temporarily acting as head of Van Kessel's law firm, told De Andere Krant that he too has not had any contact with his partner since June 11th. According to Stassen, restraining a suspect is one of the most severe measures the Public Prosecution Service had at its disposal, so they have to produce very strong evidence. So far, he has seen nothing. The Public Prosecution Service told this newspaper that the Public Prosecution Service realizes that this is a very serious instrument and should not be used lightly, but declined to comment further on the case. Many suspect that attorney Van Kessel has gotten too close to the truth in the coronavirus case. This has led to the case being associated with the prosecution of German lawyer Rainer Fuellmich, who was well underway into compiling evidence that lawyers all over the world could use for a crimes against humanity case against the monsters who perpetrated the COVID scam, but even more so are responsible for orchestrating the Great Reset, which he found COVID was instrumental for accelerating the planned collapse of societies worldwide. Rainer was essentially kidnapped from Mexico by the German government, despite no extradition treaty between Germany and Mexico, and has been holed up on bogus charges for some time now. We posted about his harrowing account of what he was being subjected to in his court case. He said, "One of the guards subjects me to a body search, then forces me to kneel on a stool while he shackles my feet." And that is a drawing of what Rainer was going through at the time. Now, in the case of Van Kessel and this charge against him that he's part of this sovereign movement, we found a very interesting Substack article about what actually happened to a group of people that were arrested across the country. We just want to show you a little bit of that article. So it says, in the beginning of June 2025, a group of people was arrested in the Netherlands. Spread out over the country, 8 people were detained in a way appropriate for terrorists. SWAT teams, special investigative units, and detectives were deployed for these arrests. Small villagers were shocked to see these massive police forces coming for elderly people in their 50s and 60s who generally led a peaceful life, a bit isolated and distant from society. They were said to be quiet and friendly people, always willing to help out when needed. So why the violent arrests and why the framing in the media? Well, the media tells us these people are sovereigns, to be seen as extremists and terrorists wanting to overthrow the Dutch government using violence. The media tells us weapons, chemicals, drugs, and large quantities of cash were found. But insiders have told that in reality, the police found some firework leftovers from New Year, a few €100 in cash, and a bottle of thinner and hydrochloric acid. The sovereigns have been detained in complete confinement, meaning they are not allowed any contact with the outside world. Hear that, everyone? Don't you dare keep any leftover fireworks after New Year. And God forbid you have any paint thinner in your home. That is a clear indication that you are planning a violent insurrection with your 7 friends across the country. Look out, New World Order. These guys have $200 in cash. So the term sovereign is the new conspiracy theorist. Conspiracy theorist, once coined as a slur for a critically thinking individual, is now being worn as a badge of honor, symbolizing a truth teller and a truth seeker. It is no longer a slur, and people, rightfully so, lean into the name calling. But the new terms being referenced are things like sovereign or, what are you, some kind of constitutionalist? The reality is, these terms are being used to frame people that, for the most part, are trying to live somewhat off the grid, not have their every move tracked and traced by the government, banking cartels, and big tech working with governments, as terrorists. It is a very slippery slope when we continue to see people who are trying to live independently from the boot of the state on their necks as terrorists. You know, like the Amish. But they're coming after them too. You can't grow your own food, be in control of your own income, your medical choices, literally know where your next meal is coming from. They want us to be waiting on them to feed us because if you have a way of being self-sufficient, you won't get on a UBI. And that is the goal of all of this. And going back to the case of Rainer Fuellmich and Van Kessel, the small handful of lawyers who are actually trying to take down this system are rotting away in prison. What does that tell you? There are things that you can do to keep yourself fit, healthy, and protected in this world where it seems like attacks on our health come from all sides. Take charge of your health with the Energetic Health Institute, giving you the tools to lead a healthier, more balanced life, brought to you by Dr. Henry Ealy and doctors just like him. True healers and physicians who are making people well successfully outside of Big Pharma. Visit myehialoha.org/#VFox and join their live conferences, Virtual Solutions Summit, engaging Q&A sessions with their first-class, heart-centered professionals, and access all past event replays anytime, anywhere. You can also join the Healing for the Ages community, led by Drs. Brian Ardis, Ed Group, Henry Ealy, and Jana Schmidt, and become part of a movement dedicated to building a healthier future where health and healing comes first. All of these invaluable resources are a whopping 30% off when you use code VFOX. So that link again is myehialoha.org/#VFOX.